First, we're going to talk about Republican congressman elect from the state of New York, which, recall, we have lost control of the House, we being Democrats. I am a Democrat. I assume a lot of people watching it either left-leaning independents or Democrats. And losing the House of Representatives by a small number of elected officials is largely stemming from the loss of seats in New York, which some of them from, let's just say, DCCC chairman to middle of the road, northern or upper state New York, upstate New York, not New York City necessarily, but these seats in New York and as well as in California, where these are extremely blue states, but we are losing seats because of the maps, because of taking seats for granted, etc. But one of these seats is George Santos, who is supposedly, and I say supposedly because there is some question around this now, but is a supposedly openly gay Republican congressperson elect in New York. And you will see as we dive further into this interview that he has done with Tulsi Gabbard, which, of course, I will put my 2 cents in here in a second on her too. But he does an interview with Tulsi where he is pressed about some of the lies, and what he has been caught lying about is, one, that he was married to a woman and divorced as recently as 2019. Now, that doesn't. Let's take a step back and say we all know that does not make someone necessarily not gay, or it doesn't mean we shouldn't take their sexuality, to heart. But it is something that was not disclosed as somebody that was running as an openly gay individual. That is something that anybody would want to know, whether it's people that are, that's something that is politics 101. If it's undisclosed, there's probably a reason for that. But also because it's kind of diverting from his original saying oh, I'm the first openly gay Republican elected to the House of Representatives. It does mean something, right? It's not that big of a deal, but it does mean something. This is just scratching the surface. So the next lie, as we will see in the interview that he is called out upon, is lying about his resume, where he talked about working for big banks on Wall Street, working on Wall Street. I believe he says Goldman Sachs or all these big banks, right? And of course, that was a lie too. He did not work for any of them. JP Morgan, I believe, is the other one. He did not work for any of these banks. He lied about his resume to get elected. Now, if you or I lied about what we did, our work experience on our resume, any single one of us, for any single job, whether it's basically McDonald's to working to be the CEO of a big bank, whatever it was, anything in between, we would be fired for lying about that on our with justified cause, frankly. Now, there's one thing to say you stretch the truth, but these are blatant lies because he's never worked in these places. The other lie that he really used in campaigning, and again, this is supposedly from the party that hates identity politics, that despises all this stuff, was him lying about being Jewish, which I don't know if there's any proof to his claim that you will see in the interview, but he is a confirmed Catholic, which you could also push, religion is kind of this thing where you can be one thing one day and another next, not because of just willy-nilly changing it, but belief is your belief, right? Your belief system is your belief system. And I think everyone has the right to do that. I was a confirmed Catholic, but I am an agnostic now. But that does not mean that I can say, I am, the first, if, I got elected or something, I'm the first Muslim to be elected to this position. Because, that's not something that I've ever practiced. It's not a religion I've ever practiced. His claim is that he was Jewish, despite not being Jewish. There is not necessarily evidence to support it. This is why I'm saying being ethnically, you know, whether he's Ashkenazi Jew or something like that, that is something that is up for question, I suppose. But his response to being called out for not being Jewish was saying that he was Jew-ish. Like, he is, you know, kind of Jewish. Which is the weirdest response that you can possibly have. It'd be one thing if you were just like a regular Joe Schmo and you were just, you know, it's just like a joke that you have. But this is a guy that was running for the United States House of Representatives, utilizing his different pieces of his identity to get elected. So these are consistent lies over and over and over again. None of which, nothing about his resume was true. Nothing about his, campaign basically was real. Now, before we get into the interview that Tulsi Gabbard does, I want to point out, you will see Tulsi Gabbard interviewing George Santos, and might be saying, well, how has that happened? Does Tulsi have her own podcast or something? Maybe, I don't know. But this is not on Tulsi.net or whatever. This is Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, former congressperson, filling in for Tucker Swanson Carlson. The entitled brat himself, Tucker Carlson, having Tulsi Gabbard fill in for him. And now, remember, Tulsi Gabbard was supposedly just so fed up with the Democratic Party that she had to become an independent. But she is definitely, she's definitely not right-wing. She's definitely not right-wing, but she's filling in for a Fox News host, the most far-right one maybe out of all of them. I will give her props for holding Santos's feet to the fire, and I will tell you why I think she does it at the end. But for now, let us dive in, and I want to get in about right here.
Congressman-elect Santos, thank you for joining us today. First question I really want to ask you, now that all of this has been revealed, is what does the word integrity mean to you?
This is an interesting question coming from Tulsi Gabbard, someone that has lied to the American people about her stances on a million different things, including her stance on the LGBTQ plus community. But, go after him. Go after him, Tulsi.
Well, Tulsi, thank you for having me. To answer your question, integrity is very important. And like I said to the New York Post, embellishing
what does it mean,
was
though?
a mistake.
What does it mean? Because the meaning of the word actually matters in practice.
Of course, it means to carry yourself in an honorable way. And I made a mistake. And I think
he made many mistakes.
Humans are flawed, and we all make mistakes, Tulsi. I think we can all look at ourselves in the mirror and admit that once in our life we made a mistake. I'm having to admit this in national television for the whole country to see, and I have the courage to do so because I believe that in order to move past this and move forward and be an effective member of Congress, I have to face my mistakes, and I'm facing them. The reality is that I remain committed to doing everything I set forward in my campaign. I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fake. I didn't...
Everything about him is quite literally fake. I mean, literally everything that he campaigns on. He's going to talk about at the end here, and this is a long clip, so just stay with me. But at the end through here, he's going to say, I'm talking about inflation and crime and all this stuff, which I'm sure he is because it's just parroting the Republican narrative. But he campaigned on his identity. He campaigned on these experiences. This is what people look for a lot of times in Congress people, in elected officials, saying, what was your experience? What did you do before you ran for office? That's why Trump became, he's a businessman. I might not agree with everything he says, but he's a businessman. So I have to vote for him, right? Obviously, this is not my opinion, but this is what people have said. So if you're saying that you're this big financier, I worked on Wall Street, I worked for, JP Morgan, I worked with all of these different companies, I managed all this stuff, and it's fake, I'm telling you, you would be fired the instant any of these companies found out that you were lying to them.
Materialized from thin air. I worked damn hard to get where I got my entire life. Life wasn't easy. It didn't start off easy. As I've said it many, many times, I come from abject poverty. I made some mistakes.
So that part is also interesting. I didn't set this up before the clip, but the weird part about this, which people have started to dig into, is his funding of his life functionally and his campaign during this period. He had no taxable income for, I believe it was 2020, and then in 2021 somehow makes $700,000, and it's insane, the spike and then drop to nothing. And then looking at, people have started to look at and pull his campaign finance reports, and the disbursement of those finance reports is also, let's just say, it doesn't make any sense. The spending doesn't make strategic sense. The fact that he is spending, I think it was 26% of his money on fundraising and 25% on like actual voter outreach, and he still won. There's something fishy there.
And I own up to them. And now I want to put this past me so I can deliver for the American people.
The thing is, Congressman-elect, integrity means, yes, carrying yourself with honor, but it means telling the truth, being a person of integrity. And if I were one of those in New York's 3rd District right now that the election is over, and I'm finding out all of these lies that you've told, not just one little lie or one little embellishment, these are blatant lies. My question is, do you have no shame? Do you have no shame in the people who are now, you're asking to trust you to go and be their voice for them, their families, and their kids in Washington?
Tulsi, I can say the same thing about the Democrats and the party. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been lying to the American people for 40 years. He's the president of the United States. Democrats resoundingly support him. Do they have no shame? I've made this very clear.
This is not about the Democratic Party, though.
I just want to pinpoint this for when we come back at the end about me positing what's going on here. But Tulsi is one of the most rabid dissenters of what Democrats do, as somebody that is supposed to be progressive. Again, she's not actually somebody that is progressive. She LARPed as a progressive for a while. Now she's saying that she's an independent, but even her saying this, saying like on Tucker Carlson's show, this is not about the Democrats, then yeah, I mean, he's trying to get off scot-free, and it's just not happening.
It's about your relationship, frankly, with the people who've entrusted you to go and fight for them. And I think one of the questions that really probably hits home to a lot of people is are you Jewish? We've got a letter that your campaign sent out earlier this year, which reads as follows: as a proud American Jew, I've been to Israel numerous times for educational, business, and leisurely trips. You said there in that letter that you are, quote, a proud American Jew. How do you explain that?
My heritage is Jewish. I've always identified as Jewish. I was raised a practicing Catholic. I think I've gone through this. Even I've not being raised a practicing Jew. I've always joked with friends and circles, even in the campaign, I'd say, guys, I'm Jewish. Remember, I was raised Catholic. So look.
So this is like what I said in the introduction there. Is there a chance that he has, Jewish heritage or any of this stuff? Sure. But to put that amount of emphasis on it, and then to not be clear and to not say like all this stuff leading up before it, and then just to send out letters and I'm sure that's a fundraising letter, saying, as a proud American Jew, like this stuff matters. I know it's like minor detail, but especially in the wake of all of the anti-Semitism that is going on in this country, and like the big names like Kanye perpetuating this stuff, it is something that needs to be called out for people, lying about this or utilizing it, wielding it. And frankly, a lot of the people that are the most hyper vigilant about Israel's influence in the region. Not that they shouldn't have sovereignty over the nation, which again, this is something that is much bigger than the topic that we're talking about today. But they are also saying that they want that stuff for absolutely the wrong reasons. Not to say that Jewish people should have their own state, but rather to, and I am not making this up, to bring forth, you know, the second coming of Jesus and the rapture and all of that stuff. So just pump the brakes sometimes when you hear some of these folks really pressing into the Israel stuff from the far right. When you really dig into what they want, there is some pretty sketchy stuff.
I understand everybody wants to nitpick at me. I'm going to reassure this once and for all. I'm not a facade. I'm not a persona. I have an extensive career that I worked really hard to achieve, and I'm going to deliver from my experience because I remain committed in delivering results for the American people. I campaigned on inflation. I campaigned on crime. I campaigned on education. I campaigned on delivering resolve for the American people. That's what the people of the 3rd Congressional District heard me on and on as I campaigned. Now it's going to be incumbent upon me to deliver on those results, and I look forward to servicing and serving my district. I look forward to serving my people in my district to make sure that they see that this is what
looking for. The results that people are looking for are called into question when you tell blatant lies, not embellishments. And this is, I think, one of the biggest concerns, Congressman-elect, is that you don't really seem to be taking this seriously. You've apologized. You said you've made mistakes, but you've outright lied. A lie is not an embellishment on a resume. You said you worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, but they've said, we've got no record of this guy working for us. You've said you've gone to and graduated from these universities.
Oh, that was the other thing. He hasn't even graduated from college at all, which that's not slighting anybody that hasn't gone to college. But he has said that he went to these universities and got these degrees. It's, oh my God, if you applied to work at any job and lied about this stuff, you'd be fired.
But they've said, well,
we should definitely let this guy be congressperson. I mean, I know it's not so simple. We can't just remove him, but this is insanity.
Got no record of that. These are blatant lies, and it calls into question how your constituents and the American people can believe anything that you may say when you are standing on the floor of the House of Representatives, supposedly fighting for them. That's the real issue here.
Well, look, I agree with what you're saying, and as I stated, and I continue, we can debate my resume and how I worked with firms such as Goldman and Citigroup.
Is it debatable, or is it just false?
No,
is it debatable, or is it just
debatable.
False?
No, it's not false at all. It's debatable. I can sit down and explain to you what you can do in private equity, in capital intro, via servicing limited partners and general partners, and we can.
Again, this is something that is a trick. If he might have been able to work with ancillarily, right? Like do business with, not work for, but work with Citibank, Goldman Sachs, etc. The same way that, like, as an accountant, I've worked with plenty of different clients. I've worked with plenty of big businesses. But it doesn't mean I work for them. I can't use that in my resume to say, hey, I worked for this company. You can talk about it as an experience saying I worked with this company on this project while I was working here. But you can't just come out and say, oh, I worked for Goldman Sachs when you really didn't. You worked in private equity. It is so disingenuous, and yeah, well, I'll leave it at that.
You can have this discussion that's going to go way above the American people's head, but that's not what I campaigned on. I campaigned on delivering results for the American people by lowering inflation. I can sit down, and if you want to have that discussion, I'd be glad to, Tulsi, to explain that to you and make sure that we settle the score.
This is not about settling scores, and I think you just kind of highlighted, I think, my concern and the concern that people at home have. You're saying that this discussion will go way above the heads of the American people, basically insulting their intelligence. So not only are you now backtracking on these lies that you've told, but you're saying that you can't explain it in a way that your constituents would actually be able to understand.
I can explain it in a way
and that
if you
these
give
lies
me,
are
if you
debatable.
give me the time, I can easily if you give me the time, I can easily explain it for you as in when investors are looking for capital and I'm sitting there doing due diligence on the appetite and what they're looking for.
Clearly someone
right?
didn't do diligence on him.
Alongside GPs and LPs to help them place this capital. This is what I was doing, and that's when I worked extensively with these firms and many other firms at my time as I was vice president of Linkbridge Investors. So this isn't a made-up narrative, but I feel like nobody really wants to sit down and talk about it. Everybody just wants to push me and call me a liar. Look, I embellished my resume.
Santos.
I did.
Congressman-elect Santos, we've given you a lot of time. I think the time that is owed is to the people of New York's 3rd. It's hard to imagine how they could possibly trust your explanations when you're not really even willing to admit the depth of your deception to them. Thank you so much for being here and joining us.
Thank you, Tulsi.
Now, the rare Tulsi W right there. But in chat, I see 2 different comments. Melissa saying rumor, and this kind of leads into what I was going to say about what my thought on this is and the potential of what's going on here. But Melissa says rumor is that they had Oppo that they were waiting on the New York Times to publish it, which is actually crazier than what is happening. And then that leads into Eric's comment, which is the Democrats' failure in this district. Now, to be fair, I'm taking your word for it in chat. I don't know that Santos' opponent Zimmerman was a Working Families Party aligned candidate. However, if that's the truth and that's why they didn't fund him, again, let's also point out that the state party, and I don't know if you saw this in the beginning, but my critique of the New York State Party is literally that they cost us, New York State Party and the California State Party have cost us control of the House of Representatives for these specific reasons. And the Working Families Party in New York City can run on the same ticket. So you can be a Working Families Party aligned candidate and be a Democrat in New York. It's slightly different than in Pennsylvania, where it is like you're a Working Families Party candidate. That is how Philadelphia has it, where we actually have an elected Working Families Party candidate in Kendra Brooks on the Philadelphia Council. But in New York, you can be a Democrat, but you're a Working Families Party slate candidate. But if that's the case, and that is why they did this, then this is an even more failure on the Democratic Party. I have to take your word for it, but my opinion is, and my guess is, on all of this, is that there is something that is coming out about all this, that the Republicans are going to distance themselves from him. It is not just that he has lied. I'm sure that it is something that is tied to that finance piece. There is something that is probably going to come out. And again, if the Democrats had this and they did not run on it and they did not promote it, they did not share it with the candidate, they did not just bring this everywhere, that is a failure of the party. That is a failure. And if the candidate had it, because again, I don't know who had what when they had it, but the opposition of this candidate should have been gunning. That should have been shotgunning across the airwaves the entirety of this campaign, and we would be one seat closer to a majority. Yes, designated as Dem Working Families Party. I trust you, Eric. I'm not questioning it. I'm just saying, from my perspective, I don't have an experience of the candidate on the other end. I just know that it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. As a progressive Democrat, like I've seen it myself. We've all seen it in dealing with the party sometimes. The party really doesn't like to support certain candidates that are more progressive than the other ones, especially in districts that can be toss-ups. They don't want to support somebody that might win a primary out of nowhere. They might not want to support a progressive candidate that is grassroots supported, that's not bringing in billions of dollars, metaphorically billions of dollars for their other Congress people to take money from and share the fundraising from. But my opinion here is just that the news media, Tucker Carlson, because this is where I'm drawing this connection, is that if Tulsi is holding his feet to the fire, that is through the approval of Tucker Carlson, that is from the approval of Fox News, and frankly, they're gonna cut ties like this so publicly, then there is something that is coming that I think will make it so that he either has to resign or that he is just an outcast. But who knows? Because Marjorie Taylor Greene was an outcast when she was elected, talking about Jewish space lasers and promoting QAnon. So was Lauren Boebert, and now they're mainstream Republicans just now gaining power, and they will probably be given committee chair positions. So who knows what is reality at this point? And there's a lot that we're gonna see over the next couple of months as we see these folks being given the reins of the House of Representatives, frankly, which again is ultra important, why we have to pay attention to these seats moving forward. And we can't just cede ground to these nut jobs in hard to win seats. We have to run good candidates, and we have to run good campaigns. We have to make sure that we're funding campaigns, not just funding the elites in these certain areas that bring in tons of money. I don't even remember the guy's name in New York anymore. The DCCC's chairs, like sucking up money from candidates that, it might not have flipped a seat, but it would help. There are these seats that just keep draining funds from other people.